What you just saw is a JDAM bomb. A 2,000-pound bomb dropped from an F-35 fighter jet. During a training mission, the footage was recorded from 4 kilometers away, so because of the distance, it's hard to really grasp what actually happened. I know you want to see it up close, don't you? Here is a joint direct attack munition being launched against Taliban positions in Afghanistan. Notice the reaction of the American soldiers. They know exactly what's coming. But for you to really understand the devastating impact of this weapon, I'll show you a joint direct attack munition up close. And in this case, hitting a munitions factory that was completely empty. This is the weapon that completely changed the rules of the game in Ukraine. That's because a single bomb like this, dropped from a Soviet fighter jet from the 80s, not only destroyed a strategic Russian bridge, it did something no one thought was possible. It forced Russia's most advanced air defense system to make an impossible decision. A choice between 2 options, and both meant defeat. How did an American bomb dropped from a Soviet plane manage to put Russian military pride in checkmate? The answer will surprise you. To understand how this was possible, I need to tell you about an attack that happened in July this year on a bridge considered extremely strategic in the Zaporizhia region. This bridge wasn't just a concrete structure lost in the middle of Ukrainian territory. It was much more than that. It was the backbone that kept the entire Russian military operation in southern Ukraine alive. Imagine a main artery in your body. If you cut it, everything that comes after stops working. And that's exactly what happened. Every day, 230 vehicles cross this bridge. 230. A third of them carried ammunition straight to the Russian front lines. The rest transported fuel and food, the lifeblood of any army. But here's the detail that few people know. The bridge was not just a passage. It hid something much more valuable. Behind it, on the eastern bank, was the secret logistics center of the 35 Degrees Russian Army Corps, a command and control hub protected by a dense fog of war caused by the constant movement of vehicles in the region. The Russians thought they were safe there, but as you will see, they were very mistaken. Ukraine's choice of this target was not accidental. It was surgical. Ukrainian intelligence identified what the military calls a choke point, a place where several critical supply lines meet. Destroy that point and you don't just cut off one road. You cut off the oxygen to an entire military operation. Now, let's talk about the attack. How did Ukraine manage to turn a fighter jet from the 80s into a modern precision attack platform? This is where we're going to connect the dots. I'm going to tell you a story of ingenuity that will impress you. Take a good look at this aircraft. You're looking at a MiG-29, a Soviet fighter jet. And what about the Joint Direct Attack Munition Extended Range Bomb we mentioned at the beginning of the video? Well, it's American, and in theory, they should never work together. It's like trying to plug a USB cable into an old television. It just doesn't fit. The systems are completely incompatible, but Ukrainian engineers pushed creativity to the limit. they developed a special adaptation kit, a pylon, which is basically the hook or support where the bombs are hung under the plane. The Ukrainian engineers modified this support by adding a conical protrusion that extends forward from the bomb. And inside this protrusion, they placed a dedicated global positioning system antenna. This allows the American bomb to receive accurate satellite data even when carried by a plane that wasn't designed for it. And there's more. The Ukrainian pilot can now see NATO weapon range and targeting data on a screen in the cockpit. It's a simple but brilliant solution. And do you want to know what the result was? You now have a bomb that can glide for more than 70 kilometers and hit the target with an accuracy of just 5 meters. And suddenly, a Soviet fighter jet from the 80s became a modern long-range attack platform. And this created a gigantic problem for Russia. But wait, this attack on the bridge wasn't that simple. Actually, it was the result of a brilliant tactical operation that put the Russians in a really complicated situation. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Weeks before the attack, Ukraine carried out a systematic campaign to clear the way. The Russian Buk M2 air defense systems, which had a radar range of 45 kilometers, were detected and neutralized one by one, some destroyed by direct attacks, others blinded by electronic warfare. It was like turning off the alarms before the main attack. And the real masterstroke happened with the S-400 system, the pride of Russian air defense. In this operation, the Ukrainians demonstrated a deep understanding of military psychology. They created what experts call forcing a draw. Imagine a chess game where any move your opponent makes results in a loss. The Ukrainian MiG-29 launched the Joint Direct Attack Munition Extended Range bombs from within an area protected by Ukrainian Patriot batteries. When the bombs began gliding toward the bridge, the Russian S-400 system detected them. Now, the Russians faced a tough dilemma. To intercept the bombs and save the bridge, the S-400 would have to activate its engagement radar. But the moment it did that, its location would be instantly detected by the Patriot systems, which were there waiting for exactly that signal. Patriot missiles are specifically designed. The Russian commander had to choose between activating the radar to save the bridge and probably losing his valuable S-400 system. Or he could stay silent, preserve the system, but watch the bridge get destroyed. He chose survival. The S-400 stayed quiet there, didn't fire, and the bridge collapsed. It was a perfect tactical checkmate. Ukraine turned its air defense into an offensive trap. The consequences of that explosion went far beyond what anyone imagined. The first thing that happened was instant logistical chaos. All the traffic that depended on the bridge was forced to take a 160-kilometer detour. That's a lot. Imagine if you had to take a detour that big every day to get to work. Now imagine doing that with tanker trucks full of fuel. The alternative route went through Berdyansk, a narrow strip of land that turns to mud with the summer rains. Now imagine their situation. Heavy trucks getting stuck, fuel consumption almost doubling, travel time tripled. It wasn't just an inconvenience, it was the collapse of an entire system. The numbers are impressive. The fuel needed to reach the Russian tanks was being burned during transport. Armored vehicles, BMP-3s, ran out of supplies. The chain of command realized they could no longer reinforce their positions in Mariupol. Do you want to know what the Russian response was? Well, they decided to use air transport, Il-76 planes to carry spare parts and emergency ammunition. But that created two new problems. First, Each ton transported by plane costs 3 times more than by truck. Second, large and slow targets like the UIL-76 are extremely easy to detect and shoot down. But the chaos didn't stop there. The bridge was also a vital artery for civilian supplies. Refrigerated trucks carrying food from Donbass to Crimea were forced to take the same 160-kilometer detour. Fuel consumption skyrocketed. Logistics companies began reporting losses and sending the bill directly to the government, asking for at least an 18% increase in prices in Crimea. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to cover the costs. Stop and think about that. A single precision strike was causing economic instability throughout an entire occupied region. The Russian response was pure panic. With the bridge destroyed, they urgently needed to protect the remaining alternative routes. Su-30 fighter jets were sent to patrol the line. Between Vasilivka and Melitopol, exactly the region where the convoys forced to detour were now passing. But there's a problem. To avoid entering the range of the Patriot missiles, these fighter jets are forced to fly below 4,000 meters. This drastically limits their field of vision and attack capability. In other words, they were conducting patrol flights but without posing a real threat. And with that, the valuable S-400 batteries were scattered in a disorganized way, set up on temporary ramps, constantly moving to avoid destruction. But that mobility comes at a price. The radars could no longer operate at the ideal altitude, which significantly worsened their performance. In another desperate move, the Russians began using chemical masking systems to make it harder to aim the Joint Direct Attack munition bombs. But this ended up hindering their own coordination on the ground. They also rushed to integrate electronic jammers into the Sukhoi 30, but the software wasn't ready. The expected date for it to be ready would be months later, and this, in other words, meant being exposed and vulnerable for several months. And here's the part that's probably keeping the Russian commanders up at night. That was just the beginning. Ukraine now has more than 18 MiG-29 fighter jets, equipped with the capability to carry Joint Direct Attack munition extended range bombs. Thanks to new pylon adapters, each aircraft can carry 2 bombs on a single mission. This creates a multiplier effect. More destruction with fewer flights. And there's more. The Pentagon has committed to delivering 900 additional J-Direct Attack munition extended range kits by the end of 2025. These are no longer sporadic attacks. It's a planned and sustained campaign. Ukraine already has the list of upcoming targets defined. Among them are the suspension towers of the Kerch Bridge, the personal symbol of Putin's imperial project, and also the Mariupol railway viaduct, a critical artery for supplying forces in the east. The strategy is clear. Attack 1 bridge per week until the Russians realize that not even the precious Kerch Bridge is safe. It's not just physical destruction, it's psychological warfare. It's showing that no part of the Russian logistics network in Ukraine is safe, that their presence in the south is becoming progressively unsustainable. This is the new art of war, intelligence and precision overcoming brute force and old methods. A single global positioning system coordinate can change the fate of an entire front. And as this attack demonstrated, sometimes destroying a bridge is enough to immobilize an entire brigade. The bridge we mentioned at the beginning of the video was just the first domino to fall. The real war isn't in the trenches, it's in the supply lines. And in this war, Ukraine has just shown that it has the right weapon to win. Now I want to know your opinion. Do you believe that this strategy of attacking logistical infrastructure is more effective than direct combat on the front lines? Leave your opinion in the comments. If you found this content useful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you found it interesting, share it with your friends. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.